Well, good morning, guys. Today is February the 13th, and this morning we're going to be looking together in Psalm chapter number 13. Psalm chapter 13 is another one of those psalms where David is crying out to God. He's on the run from Saul. Saul's chasing him, pursuing him. Even though David has already been anointed to be the king of Israel, Saul is still sitting on the throne. But David did not want to do battle against Saul because Saul was still God's anointed. So David, following after the principles that God has given him in authority, is not doing battle, not fighting against, but submitting to the authority that is currently over his life. And even though that authority was trying to capture and kill David, he still did what was right. But even in the midst of doing what was right, he was struggling on the inside. In this chapter, David is crying out to God about this situation that he's in the middle of. It starts off, "Oh Lord, how long will you forget me? Forever?" Have you ever felt like that? Have you ever been in the middle of something and you just wondered, God, do you even remember who I am? Have you forgotten about me? And David goes through this psalm repeating that basic idea of, God, how long are you going to let this happen? Have you turned your back on me? Have you forgotten about me? Are you just disconnected? Are you ignoring me? But then something transitions in verse 5 where David turns from fear to faith and he remembers who God is. Verse 5, but, starts off with that big transition word, but I trust in your unfailing love. I will rejoice because you have rescued me. Verse 6 says, I will sing to the Lord because he is good to me. He's generous to me. David stopped looking at his fears and his foes, and he started looking in faith. And I'm telling you what, that should encourage every one of us. David was a guy just like you and just like me. He struggled on the inside, wondering if God forgot about him, wondering if God abandoned him when he's going through these difficulties and tough times. And he came to God with his questions. And that's okay. It's okay to have questions as long as you bring those questions to God. It's okay to have doubts. David had doubts. It's okay to have doubts as long as you bring those doubts to God. And David, when right in the middle of this, finally, God reveals himself to David, and David turns from his fears to his faith and says, I'm just going to remember, God, how good you have been to me. How generous, verse 6 says. Good, that word good means generous. I will trust in your unfailing love. Man, he does love us. I will rejoice because you've rescued me. God will always rescue us. He never leaves us in the middle of a trial longer than what we can handle. I will sing to the Lord because he's good or he's generous to me. God will put a song in your heart. I find it interesting that so many times we look at the Psalms as, and they are songs, and how many of them are centered on the individual who is giving the psalm. Like David, God, what are you doing to me? Is very centered on himself. And then about halfway through or towards the end of the psalm, it switches over and he focuses on God. And that happens to us a lot of times. We get focused on ourselves. We get stuck in our pity party. We get stuck in our depression. But God is there, and he's never taken his eye off of us. He's never taken his hand off of us. He's just waiting for the right time to reveal himself to us, teaching us faith, teaching us to trust in him. See, it's easy to trust God when everything's good, when there's money in the bank account, when there's no fighting in your marriage, when the kids are doing good, when work is doing good. It's easy to trust God, but it's also easy to forget God because everything is good. You see, where we grow as a Christian is in the valleys and in the tests. And God will put us there to help grow our faith and our trust in him. I hope you'll spend some time today reading this psalm and getting into it, digging in, see what God has for you today. Get in God's word. And I'll see you tomorrow. God bless you. Have a great day.